Introducing Zach Davis and Josh Anderson with the SoundMoney Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the SoundMoney Sound Principles Podcast. My name's Josh Anderson. I'm glad to be here today. Zach is out on family vacation, but we got an awesome show put together for you today with some special guests. And wow, this week had everything. Iran stood down, oil crashed by 15%, gold spiked to a 3-week high to 48.08. Silver, since we last met, surged by 5%, 4.73 to be exact. That was as of yesterday. As of this morning, it's now 8%. And we're gonna dive into those things for a few minutes today and share where we're at on those. And we have a really fun segment coming up at the back half of the show today. For those entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, you'll be in for a treat. And I'd like to welcome today, with Zach out of town, we got some special guests with us today. I'd like to welcome first to the podcast today, co-founder of SoundMoney, the SoundMoney wallet, Mr. Anthony Webb. For our listeners, you've been with us before. Anthony, how are you today?
Hey, I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Man, it's so awesome to have you back. Today's topic on the back half of the show is right up your alley. There's nobody I know better to understand today's sound principle that we're going to talk about better than Anthony Webb. So I'm super excited to hear from you today on that, Anthony. Glad to have you here today as well.
Glad to be here.
Likewise, we've got another special guest today. We have the CEO, Mr. Blake Davis, CEO of 7K Metals, a collectible coin company that has revolutionized the space of collectible coins in the world, has sold more collectible coins than almost any company in the last decade of the space. And so glad to have you with us today, Blake. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for letting me be on here. Happy to be here.
And your insight into both the gold and silver space and the entrepreneurial space is tremendous. And so we're super excited today. I know we don't have Zach with us today. He's on family vacation, but we are in good hands today to have both these gentlemen with us today. Want to jump in this morning and today, first and foremost, with what is going on in the world. For those listeners that listened last week, who paid attention, we gave some signals, and we said, if you really watch the politics this week, if you really watch what's going on with the ceasefire, if you really watch what's going on with inflation, we talked about how last week was just a ideal scenario for dollar cost averaging and an opportunity to buy gold and silver at a 20% discount. Those that actually heeded that and went and participated actually had one killer week, gentlemen. They were able to take home 8% returns on just a week's time frame. So that's pretty awesome. But we want to jump in today, and I'm gonna share my screen here for a minute. Want to jump into what's going on around the world in gold and silver this past week, because the ceasefire bounce, right? This is it. Right? Gold surged, and the structural case for the metal improved, right? As of April 8th last week, we had the talks going on over in Islamabad. We talked about, hey, there's a ceasefire last week, and if you take advantage of this, there's this unique spot in the market where for the first time gold is actually working opposite of energy. And so when the oil continues to drop, which we saw, gold is spiking, and we saw this massive bounce in the marketplace. Gold, like I said, went up to 48.08. It's up even more than that today. Silver surged to 4.7% in the week, all on the collapse of oil. And we're going to continue to see that, right, with what's going on. Any insights? I'd love some insights from both of our guests today, Anthony or Blake, on what we're seeing with the correlation between gold and energy for the first time in the world today.
Well, I think the takeaway for me really is that we're not out of the weeds yet, right? I mean, we call it a ceasefire, right? It's a 2-week kind of, let's try it on for size ceasefire. Iran hasn't been the most level-headed partner to deal with in this, and I don't know that they really will be. I mean, I think that if things go well, we could see, energy prices continue to decline, which would yield yet another bump, right, on the gold side. But I think that we're really kind of just trying on this for size, and I'm really shocked at the amount of movement that we saw over something that is really I'll call it a loose ceasefire, right? I mean, we're forcing our hand and we're allowing tankers to go through the straits there, but I don't think that we're out of the weeds yet. Certainly, you know, I would like to see the energy continue to decline, but it's it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
I think what's really interesting for me on that, Anthony, is that what this showed me is that the drop that we saw in gold wasn't necessarily all reality based. A lot of it was emotionally based, because even as we're seeing these little loose things like a loose ceasefire, we're seeing gold rebound dramatically and silver bounce dramatically, which tells me that a lot of the drops were more emotional based than they were technically on the technicals or on actual what's going on in the world. And so one of the unique things I think that's going on that we probably, you know, can understand better is this idea, right? At the same time that we have this oil, global oil dropping with this potential ceasefire, what we actually have is the structure of gold and silver, the actual structural bull case of gold and silver that we put out in this week's Sound Money brief that really needs to be understood, because this is what's, you know, doesn't matter really what happens to the ceasefire as much as what's technically happening in the world. Blake, I know you're pretty in tune, right? You've been, you know, as a CEO of 7K Metals, you buy lots of gold and silver in train cars of it and have it turn into collectible coins. What are some of the things, you know, off of this week's information that came out in the Sound Money brief that you find interesting about the structural case for gold and silver?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Anthony's point of it's like a loose ceasefire, and like there's lots of visuals that you could come up with, you know, Trump and Iran facing each other, having these discussions, right? Finger on the trigger kind of thing. And when things are like that, like pick any movie scene, when it's like that tense point in the movie, to your point, Josh, everyone's hair is standing up and they're ready to react, right? And so there's probably some overreaction happening in the market today. One of the things that, you know, that I like about like this headline versus core inflation, right? So the headline says, oh man, inflation is going to start running away again, which if you really look at what the Fed, like how they base their decisions, that's one of the key indicators they're looking at every single day. And so that has to do with interest rate increases, decreases, which directly ties to price of gold and silver all the time, right? And so, you know, you had this big sell-off a couple of weeks ago in gold and silver, but this week, all of a sudden, this headline comes out, CPI, it's like, we got inflation, it's going to go nuts again because of all these things. But if you carve out that data, it's one sector, right? And it's the sector that we've all been feeling. Every time you pull into a gas pump, you go, wait a minute, it went up another 30 cents, went up another 50 cents overnight, right? And so the rest of the market seems like it's at least under the context of inflation, seems like it's pretty flat today. But that one sector, I think, reading the headline, it just causes a lot of people to go, oh man, we gotta do something about this, right? So I did hear someone, it was the last couple of weeks, you know, he's an analyst in the market, and he's like, I've been doing this for 40 years and I can't make sense of these charts. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way today, looking at these things. But if you really look at the macro, tensions have always been, I mean, they've been high for 40 years. This week isn't different, right? It's not that different. And so just having a good strategy around it is probably the most peaceful thing that you can do.
Well, and I realize that some of our listeners aren't very clued in on what's going on when you use words like CPI and interest rates or inflation, right? They don't maybe understand how that correlates to gold and silver. And so for me, right, when you share that and you say that, hey, they came out and the CPI, right, said that the inflation was 3%, right? Well, that was driven by energy costs. If energy comes back down, it's going to be like this it's like doubling down at the blackjack table. Okay. So if energy comes down and now what that does is it makes it so core inflation comes down. When those two things happen in parallel like that, it's like doubling down at the blackjack table. All of a sudden, gold's going to bounce heavy. It's going to bounce to the upside heavy, because if that's the case, the Federal Reserve will then go back to the talks about reducing interest rates in 2026. If that's the case, the smart money in the world will leave all instruments that are being paid on interest, and they will move back to gold for a long-term store of value, which drives the price back up. So, it's like the trifecta, right? As oil comes down, interest can come down, core inflation comes down, gold goes through the roof. And yeah,
isn't it amazing, Josh? If you're like, lots of our listeners are probably paying attention to at least the Federal Reserve, because that impacts their mortgage rate, and impacts their maybe business loan rate, some of these things, right? But isn't it amazing? Like, if you look at the last 3 months, the flip-flop, like literal flip-flop every time the Fed speaks on what the outlook is going to be for the rest of the year. And it's all based around this right here, what's happening in Iran. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I'm going to share a different screen. This is kind of interesting, right? I'd love your guys' take on this. I'm putting up on the screen a little live chart that's out there in the world that shows what central bank gold tracker, right? Shows what's going on with countries and gold and silver. What do we learn from this? What are you guys' takeaways, right? This is what countries bought in the last few months of gold in the world. And so what can we learn from it? What does it teach us? Tell us. Anthony, I'll let you start.
Well, what stands out to me is that there are some really small countries on here, right? Relatively. I mean, you'd expect the big countries, the China's, United States, to be taking significant positions here, right? But what you're seeing here is that even small countries like Poland, for instance, is jumping out major, are jumping into the game. And really what I think, despite what's happening in the world, or maybe as a result of what's happening in the world, but there's a lot of people who take an adverse position on gold or silver, and everyone's got an idea. But when the biggest money in the world speaks, and when the countries themselves take such heavy positions into an asset like gold, I think it really speaks volumes, more so than any keyboard warrior on Twitter who's saying, oh, it's a horrible time, or it's a great time, or whatever. I think that really the rubber meets the road here with these countries and their positions they're taking. These are heavier than they've ever been, right? And I think that it really speaks to where things are going.
Yeah, when a country like Poland buys 20 tons, a small country like Poland buys 20 tons of gold in February, 11 tons in March, it says something, right? When countries like Turkey, who are dependent on other people's oil in the Strait of Hormuz, when they have to sell, they're the only seller of metal this month, right? Because they have to go buy oil higher, right? It just says a lot about what's going on in the world. When little countries like Kyrgyzstan, right? One of my hunting favorite places on the earth, right? When they go out and buy that much gold, you got to say to yourself, what are they doing? What do they know, right? They're an emerging market in an emerging country. And so, yeah, to your point, Anthony, I think it says a lot about where the rubber meets the road and what we should understand about where the real gold market is today. Blake, any thoughts on any of that?
Those who are winning the game stay in the game. Like, I look at Poland, and for 12 months straight, they're like, let's go. We're loading up, right? You've got, and by the way, you can go look at the economics of all these countries, and there's a lot of different factors that play into them. But like Brazil, they said, hey, for a hot minute last fall, they're like, hey, let's go. We probably should need to load up for whatever economic reason they came up with, right? But when it comes to Poland, they have a target, right? What was the target? Was it 700 tons or something? Was their target that they're working towards?
That's what they're working towards to be, they say, ready to withstand any emergency in the world. By the way, when the Polish prime minister came out and said that, I thought it was remarkable, because we've been preaching for a decade that the kings and queens of this earth, the central banks, the governments, they protect themselves, not with fiat currency, but with gold or silver. And when he came out and said, we got to get to 700 700 tons in order to be completely safe from any world catastrophe as a nation. I thought, we've been preaching this for every household in America, right? Don't store all your value in fiat currency. Store your long-term store of value, just like the kings and queens of the earth, just like these governments, just like these countries. And I think it's awesome that somebody like Poland had wise enough politicians right now in this current environment to say, that's the solution right there.
Yep. Those who are winning the game, stay in the game. Like I was thinking about it this morning a little bit. Like if you look at lots of our listeners know some type of real estate mogul, right? Mogul's a loose term, but in your town, there's the real estate guy. In your city, there's the real estate guy. You can look nationally and you can look, you can find on Google in 2 seconds who's really good at real estate, right?
Yeah.
And the common denominator between all of them is that they've all bought high and they've all bought low, but they keep buying. Right? It's like they haven't done it overnight. They didn't make one buy and they were mogul. They didn't make one buy and they were successful, right? They've bought for 30 years or 40 years in every market cycle, every condition. They have a plan and they believe in the asset enough that they're willing to keep getting it. They're willing to keep accumulating it, right? And so gold and silver in my mind is not dissimilar. Especially gold is not dissimilar to real estate in that fact, right? And if you really believe in an asset, then you'll just continually, like Poland is doing, they believe in the asset. You'll just continually make a strategy to keep adding it, no matter the market conditions, right? To fit your strategy.
Yeah, and I would just say, as we close out the Sound Money segment today, I would just say, right, for those that were dollar cost averaging last week when we talked, you won, right? Like you went out, you made a purchase when markets were down, you did really well. You're up 5% on silver, you're up 8% on gold. Like you did really well. For those that are listening today, looking, right, the answer is always the same. It's this DCA, right? This dollar cost averaging. If you haven't had the chance, Anthony, I'd love, maybe you could touch on this. If our listeners haven't had the chance, I'm going to share this screen. They haven't had a chance to go to the Sound.money webpage. And if they go on that page to this news section and they land there, they get this weekly brief, right? And we put a lot of time and energy into searching the world and understanding what's going on in the world. And you can get the full story here, right? You get the infographic we just shared, but you get all the details of what's going on in gold and silver. But one of the things that most listeners probably don't know, and I love this week, we also do this in audio form, and our listeners get it. They get to go listen to it. This is one of your babies, right? One of your creations. They can go right here and subscribe to that weekly briefing. What was some of the takeaways? I loved the audio this week about dollar cost averaging, and it made a parallel to this study that was done years ago by Harvard around the 10 best, like if you missed the 10 best trading days, if there was 10 days that you missed in the last 30 years, that you would actually lose 50% of your value. And it made mention in that audio that the way to win is to dollar cost average every day because you can't time the market. What are your thoughts? Like you're the one that put all this together. You compile all this for the world every week. What are some of your takeaways about that dollar cost averaging in that study? Any insights there? And by the way, you offer this for free. Your company offers this for free. You put it out every week to the world.
Every week.
Okay.
Yeah, every week. It's actually a lot of fun. I mean, there's so much information going on out there, but it's really kind of difficult to distill it down to really what are the key points that need to be known, right? And the key items to follow. But as you talk, I think Blake said it best. That those who are winning are staying in, and it really is highlighted really, really strongly by that. By what you just pointed out, that if you miss the 10 days in the cycle that were the strongest, or the 10 months in the cycle, you will have robbed yourself of the whole reason for doing it, And so we make it really easy. We allow you to kind of set up and put it on autopilot, and really make it accessible to, a broader audience. A lot of people believe this, but they don't have $5,000 to go get one of those every month, So we allow them to do it for, if they've got, we've got college kids that are, that are putting away $50, but they're doing it every single month. Right. And as their circumstances grow, they can go up to 500, and maybe they may get to a point where they can do 5,000, but it really is accessible to the masses. And I think that's perhaps our greatest value. And we'll sell them that $50 that they can have. We'll sell it to them at the 1 ounce price, right? They don't have to have $5,000 to get the best price. We'll give them the very best price for $5, for $50, and it allows them to get started. And so I really love that message, and it really is, a core tenet to our belief that people should have this stuff and that they need it.
I love what we're doing there. I love what you and your team does there every day, because it's what the world needs, right? We're going to miss those days if we're not perfect at it, right? At when to buy. So why not put it on autopilot? Why not make it simple? The most important thing in the world is that you buy when you can. It's a long-term solution. So I love everything that's going on there, and sure our listeners will love to know that they can go there to the news section of the Sound Money page. They can get that with that weekly brief. It's awesome. I'll tell you right now, it's actually the thing I look forward to on Monday mornings the very most. Every Monday morning, I love getting the brief. I love listening to it on Substack. I think it is unbelievable information for people. And so, and by the way, if you're a new listener, it's super simple. You can go there, you can create an account. Really simple, free account. Try it out, see how it is. Right, buy some gold, buy some silver, and fractionally, it's really awesome. So, we want to change gears for now, right? We want to maybe switch for a minute to the topic today of getting started in business. Like, how do you actually do it? And this is interesting, right? I have two great guests here to talk about this for a minute, because this principle of starting before you're ready, I'd like to dive into this for a few minutes with both of you, where a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, or even entrepreneurs who have a new idea, they sometimes get fixated on this idea that everything has to be perfect, everything has to be right before you launch it and before you start it. And I have with us two guests today who are excellent at this, idea of start before you're actually ready. First of all, I'd like both of you to just share like some of your overarching thoughts about what does that mean to start before you're ready? When you're going to start a new venture, a new idea, a new business, a new inside your business, a new campaign, a new idea inside of your existing business or a new business. What does it mean to start before you're ready? What does that mean to you? Blake, what's some thoughts there for that?
So, in a world today where winners are like super praised and held up, I mean, Elon Musk's the world, all the things, right? Like for a lot of people, like winning and losing, the definition of winning and losing is like really front and center today, right? Winners are held up and losers are in the news and everyone talks about them, right? Why they lost. And I think that that idea on a macro level actually is super damaging for any individual who's trying to go just start something, right? Not all the seeds in the garden that you plant are going to sprout. And so like there's a lot of people, and I fall into this once in a while too, but whenever you think you have a good idea, you might believe in the idea. You're like, man, you got the itch to go like figure it out and see if it would work or not. A lot of times we spend way too much time thinking about all the what ifs if it doesn't. And most of the time, the what ifs, if it doesn't, has to do with our social status and what other people will think about us. Like that's what it comes down to, right? Human psychology. We don't want to be outcasts in our community. But at the end of the day, if you're going to do any type of venture in the world, like if you're a solo entrepreneur, if you're on a team inside of a corporation, like it really doesn't matter. If you're going to take on any venture that has not been done before, you have to accept the idea that failing is going to be part of it. And once you accept that, then you're willing to go take any action to get started, because that's the block. Everyone doesn't want to fail. And so then they plan, never do anything, right? But I mean, I've watched it over and over again. The most successful people, they just get started to figure out what they don't know so they can solve that problem next, right? And just keep digging through it. And they're okay with it being messy and muddy, and they're okay with people going, man, you're screwing this up, you know? I think the social thing for most people is the hardest part. If you can get over that, then starting isn't as hard usually.
I love that, because that's a perspective I hadn't actually thought about, because I don't think that way. I never concern myself with what other people think about.
Yeah,
about
you have never thought that way.
I've never.
It's a superpower. Yeah,
it is a superpower, and I realize that now at this stage of life. But I love that you brought that up, because I wouldn't have went there. And I'm really interested. If I turn this question to Anthony, I doubt he would have went there. But I think it's very valid that most people don't start. They don't start because of the fear of failure, and that they have to have, everything has to be a success. But I'm going to turn it to Anthony, because my guess is that you have a different perspective of what it means to start before you're ready.
Well, yeah, and I have also, I mean, having been through this now for a long time, what I've found is that everyone's on a spectrum, you know, somewhere in between. I don't care if I fail, or, you know, or I'm just deathly afraid that if I fail and it's not comfortable and all the things. And what I think is probably the most important thing that I've seen, you know, in my career is really just to surround yourself with people who augment where you're at in the spectrum, right? Because being reckless is also not a healthy way to go about things, right? And what you need is that balance, right? And so this is why I think it's so important to consider the entire spectrum, right? And recognize where you're at very honestly. And what you'll find is that over time, you'll shift on that spectrum. This is what's happened for me, right? I wouldn't say that I'm one who enjoys to fail, right? At least not initially. But now that I'm further along in the process, I actually like the failure. I actually learn from the failure so many important lessons. And to be totally, just brutally honest with you, like my biggest successes have come on the shoulders of all of my failures. And I've taken those failures and I've spent so much time, and people would say, why are you spending so much time doing that stupid thing? You know, what is it about that stupid thing that captivates you so much? You're never going to win with it, right? But then it comes back around, because that knowledge and that little nugget that I learned through that becomes the superpower, which enabled me to succeed. And everyone says, oh boy, you've got it all, right? And I earned it all, right? And at the end of the day, I went out there and I failed, and I took those little nuggets of understanding. And sometimes it's years. It is not a process where it's like one step at a time, I'm going to go all the way to, you see that kind of that ladder of success. And what you really learn is what you learn today may not come back around for 10 years, right? But the real trick is to go through the process, right? And so like inherently, if you're someone who is risk averse, who feels like, I don't know, I'm not confident in this, team up with someone who maybe doesn't have that, right? And let them pull you towards somewhere in the middle, right? And to be totally honest, you'll be performing the same for them, right? To pull them back to reality, because the truth is really somewhere there in the middle. I think you do have to be careful, but I don't think that it should be paralyzing to you. And that's what it is very technically. So I don't think that that's really for me, it's been an evolution, but I think that it is something that, really is a process. I mean, this is a game, like this whole thing. I look at business, right, as it's a sport to me, right? If I'm down at halftime, It's okay, right? Like there's many games that are won after halftime, right? And so like when you look at these things, failure upon failure, and I'm behind, or what comes it's really interesting, but the people who win in this are the ones who go out there and earn it, right? And they go out and they earn it by being in the game. That's how they earn it. They don't earn it by wanting to be in the game or talking about being in the game. They earn it by being there, by really putting down the effort and being part of the game. I just think it's so important. The people that I admire, I like watching documentaries. I'm weird, right? But I love to turn on a documentary and see. I was watching they have these series on History Channel, the Men That Built America, right? And they have one that's called The Brands That Built America now, right? And I would suggest that people go watch these things. You're going to learn a lot about people who did just this, right? Who just went and got going. A great example of this to me is, and learning and taking your failures and turning them into something more. Procter and Gamble was really interesting. I didn't realize that these guys were a candle company, right? And they went big into candles just at the time the electricity hit, right? And the light bulb came out. And they had just gone big into candles, right? Now you can imagine that failure. They said, we're doing this, we're going and we're going to be in this game. And you can imagine how difficult that must have been for them as they sat back and they watched Lights in America going on, and they realized we're in the wrong game, right? It was a failure, right? But what were they able to do, right? Out of that, they were able to take those raw goods, and they needed to find a use for them because candles weren't going to be a thing anymore. And they took and they created the first soap that had ever existed. This bar of soap thing, I mean, people were still like lathering themselves with mud and kind of scrubbing down with dirt, to clean themselves, right? And cleanliness wasn't a thing. And they really kind of reshaped America. Now, did they intend to go out and start with soap? No, they didn't, right? But it was a byproduct of the massive failure that they had. And it was a learning experience, because when they had these materials, they needed to find a use for them. And they started into, and now Procter and Gamble is, of course, a huge brand, right? That has shaped us. But really it came off of the heels of perhaps one of the biggest flops and one of the biggest follies to exist in business. And I just think that repeats itself every single day in business. And I've seen it with myself. It's uncomfortable. These things are, kind of difficult. It's much easier to look back on these things but I do think that if you're in the game and you're wondering, what should I do? Should I get started? Maybe I shouldn't, do it. I mean, there's value in the process, immense value in the process, and your future self will thank you.
Well, and I love that. Oftentimes, what my experience has been that it's better to just start and see if your idea actually has any legs and if people will actually part with their hard-earned dollars for you, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, what you think is the greatest idea is going to have 10 iterations before somebody parts with their dollar and gives it to you.
Yep.
And once a few people start parting with their dollars, then you have something. But if you just sit and you go through the perfection process and over try and refine things, well, we got to have this feature, we got to have that feature to bring the market. But you don't actually take it to the market. You don't actually know if anyone will buy it. And at the end of the day, all that matters in the world is, will one person give another person a store of value for their idea? And if that doesn't happen, there is no business. It might be something cool. It might be something the world needs, but a business is built on this premise of one person giving another person a store of value for their goods, services, time, whatever it is. And so I'm like you, I've found that what the world would call business failure is actually just a giant rung on the ladder to stand one rung higher, to maybe get on top of my shoulders, or to get to the next level, to meet the right people, to experience the right things in the sales process or in the building process to create the next great thing. And man, it's awesome. But I've watched too many people with this failure to launch idea. They just wait. And they wait. And I just say, start, put it to practice, try it, see, because like you said, both of you said, going through the process, you will make little tweaks. I've heard both of you say, Anthony lots and Blake in other situations, that we just got to turn the knob a little different. We got to try something, we don't have it fully figured out yet. And you want to be in the game in such a way that you can turn a few knobs and you can see if the customer will respond to what you're doing. And yeah, I love those principles both of you shared. Blake, some insights into, you every day go through this process. You lead lots of people and you run a really successful entity. What does it look like to do that, right? To actually, if you got a new idea, I mean, you just went through it. That's me. Jeez. You've got this new thing you're doing right in the world, and it's radically different of the way you're selling coins than anybody else is selling coins. In the process of a week right now, how many iterations and changes does it look like of turning different knobs? Is that like once a month, once a year? I mean, you're a real entrepreneur. You're in the battlefield every day, and you're making a new way that people interact with collectible coins that nobody's ever done before, right? Brand new segment, brand new space. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's funny because yesterday I was on the phone with somebody and they said, "Hey, I'm trying to just get a handle on like this website. I want to like maybe do a few videos, like training videos for some people around this. Is it baked? Can I go make the videos?" I said, "Listen, the thing that you can plan on the most is that it will never be baked. Like it will constantly be changing." Because in fact, some users might see something different than other users because we're testing to see what might get a better response from people, right? But I don't know, in the last 14 days, there's probably been upwards of 100 different tweaks that we've done on that website. But that's probably fair, isn't it, Anthony? Anthony's working with me on this.
Yeah, very much so.
It's like every day there's a new idea. In fact, yesterday we were like, "Hey, what about this? Maybe we should go try this. Maybe we could add this feature here, or that feature there." But the point of it is, it's like we had something to start with, right? But the tweaking never ends, especially because, like, and this is important for people to know, by the way. Anthony, to your point, like a lot of times, whenever you think about building something, like, and visionaries do this sometimes, right? And lots of people do this. It's like you think you got to have the whole thing planned out, and you can see the vision, and so you go, "I got to build this product to match the vision." And what Josh pointed out, which I love, is actually you don't. What you have to do is build something called the minimum viable product. This happens in the tech space every single day, right? And I don't care if you're starting a restaurant. I don't care if you're like, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do in the world. My daughter's going through this right now. She's 11, and there's certain things in our family that are covered by, just by de facto being a part of the Davis clan. There's other things that have to be self-funded, right? And she's got her eye on something that has to be self-funded. So she's trying to figure out how to make money. And she's not happy with the jobs that we're providing at the house for her to make money. And so I'm like, well, go figure something else out, right? And so she's come up with this idea, and every day she's coming to me like scared out of her wits. Okay, this is the next step in the process. I got to go do this thing. What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? I'm like, well, what if it does work? You don't know until you go do it, right? So go do it and tell me how it goes tomorrow. And last night she comes back and says, it worked. Like the thing I needed to do, it worked. I said, great. What would have happened if it didn't? Like in her 11-year-old mind, it would have been the end of the world, and it would have been catastrophic, and her idea would have been like obsolete. But that's not reality, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, building an entire airplane to get off the runway first in today's world with the tech cycles that are happening, and what that means is, you guys, you used to be able to make a 3 to 5 year business plan. You can't do that anymore. It's 6 to 12 months. Like if you're going to have start a business, you better have anything outside of I would say normal goods and normal serve like restaurants, other things, right? That's fairly stable. But if you're doing anything else in the world, you got an idea that no one else has done, 6 to 12 months, that's your business plan. You better be iterating inside of those 6 to 12 months fast, meaning you don't have to have a full baked out plan for 3 to 5 years. You just have to have a little teeny idea, and you gotta figure out what the first step is and the minimum viable product to be able to go to market. That's what Josh was saying, right? So yeah, you can't stop iterating, or you will lose today.
Hey Josh, can I make one more point? Blake brought up a really good point, and I wanted to kind of add to that a little bit. I think that there are people who may run into the problem of not that they have, an idea they're not executing on, but they have too many ideas, right? It's like that their mind just think there are these entrepreneurial type people who they see anything and they want to make a better version of it, or they want to do. And so they end up in this analysis state that's not out of fear-based, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's just that I'm too distracted by too many shiny things around me, right? And one exercise that I think that you can look at, as you decide, okay, I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to go in. I'm finding with AI and with the advent of these models, one really valuable tip that I've employed that I just love is, AI will tell you how great you are and think everything is great. It's a little bit like your wife, right? Hopefully your wife. My wife tells me how great I am. And I think that there are people that are the yes men around you that will just be like, oh, you're successful, thus everything you do must be successful. And one thing that I found is with AI and with the models and stuff, if I have an idea, I will tell AI, now this is really a trick. You have to tell it to be use these words, brutally honest with me, right? Because AI naturally will it's a yes man to you, right? And I don't like that. I want it to be brutally honest with me. So I will say, here's a thought that I had. Be brutally honest in your assessment of this. And what I find is that it will raise, and it's very capable of raising objections, shooting holes, if there are those to be had. And in a lot of times, they are things that I've thought of and considered myself, but I haven't, I've glossed over them, but I really need to make sure. And sometimes it's things that I hadn't even thought of. And so when you talk about your finite resource, which is your time, if you're stuck trying to decide what to start, and that is your real problem, employ those tools and maybe lean on them in ways that, because you'll get at insight and you'll get at the insight quicker than you would to try and go phone a friend, right? Like you've got this friend who knows a lot about a lot. And if you ask it to be brutally honest with you, you'll learn a lot about about what you're trying to attempt or what you're going to go do. And I really do think that, that's certainly not the only, but it should be in your bag of tricks as you try to distill down, I'm moving, I'm going, this is what I'm doing. So
I would make the note though, do it with AI, do it with friends you trust who actually want you to win. Yep. But be careful doing it to the rest of the world because they naturally won't believe in you. And so they will tell things that are not true.
Yes. That's very true. And a lot of times those are the loudest voices in the room, right? And so those are the hardest ones to overcome because that's the perception you have to, everyone will stand and they want to be right on the fence to be able to point fingers and laugh at you when you fall. But it is, I think there's a lot of great resources when you're trying to figure out, where to go next, and all of them should be employed.
Well, that's just it, right? There's lots of great resources, lots of opportunities. And at the end of the day, we just want to see more people win, whether that's starting or growing your business, whether that's using your hard-earned money to secure it with purchasing power for the future with gold and silver. At the end of the day, we just want to see other people win. We've been blessed enough to win, all of us, and we want to see more people win. And as we kind of draw to a close today, I'm going to share something. Right, last week we had a little giveaway. We had a little assignment out there for some people to go to social media or go to YouTube and make a comment. And this week, I just want to say thank you to Christine Callison 5842. She gave this comment last week. She's talking about dollar cost averaging and how I've been doing it since I joined the Sound Money movement. Not only do we learn the principles of sound money you are sharing with us, but the why behind them. And I want to say congratulations to you. Reach out to Sound Money this week. We've got a special gift of $50 free Silver Eagles for you. And this week, I want to say thank you. We absolutely agree, right? At the end of the day, those that dollar cost average, those that play that game will always win. And with that, I got another little snippet out there this week. Check your stacking or your dollar cost averaging plan, right? Check it and see if you're consistent about it, or are you just waiting for the all clear sign, right? Don't wait for the all clear sign. Just like we talked about in business, and just like we talked about today with trying to time the markets of gold and silver or any commodity. At the end of the day, being consistent is what matters. And drop us a comment about what you're going to do and how you're going to change, whether you're going to start right now in your new business or your business plan or what you're trying to do, or with your dollar cost averaging or with your purchasing of gold and silver. Like, let us know what you're trying to accomplish there. And you might be featured next week as we share with the audience of how you can win in those spaces. I'm going to let each of you have a last word today. Last word for the listeners about any of the topics we've covered today and how you see them. And so, Blake, I'll let you go first.
I would just say this for the week. The dollar cost averaging thing, I love the stat, 18% more metals. Like, that's the perception in which I like to view my purchases, right? When I'm investing, it's like I just got more of the thing. That's one. Two is, start before you're ready. A lot of times, I would say that everyone listening could, without hesitation, could identify one thing in their life that is stopping them from getting started. Whether it's they don't want to sacrifice their TV time, whether they don't want to sacrifice this or that. Usually that's what it comes down to. And for me, I call those dragons in my life, right? It's the thing that's stopping me from living the life that I want to live. And so this week I would say, identify your dragon and slay it. Like, just get it done.
Love it. I love it. Slay those dragons all day. Anthony.
I would just say, what a time to be alive, guys. I mean, we've got, people who have come before us that we stand on shoulders of, and man, they just didn't have the opportunities that we had. And I would say that this is, perhaps one of the greatest times to be around, right? I mean, we have such the ease with which we can transact, the ease with which we can communicate. There are no boundaries. The only boundaries are, like Blake said, these are personal issues, right? That get in the way of us taking full advantage of this day and age in which we live. And so, and I will say that the best is yet to come as well. But it's really up to us to make it the best, right? And it's really us to capture and seize the day. I was around the dinner table with some college kids that, my son's in college, and brought some friends home, and they were just talking. And one of them made a comment, said, I just kind of missed the AI thing. I just missed it. I don't know that much about it. I look at what my peers are doing around me, and I guess I just missed it because I don't get it. Right. And as if that there was a wave that came through and they just didn't catch it. And I kind of stopped him in his tracks. I was like, listen, buddy, like the good news is the wave that's behind it is much bigger. And the best time to get into it and to get going is right now. Right. And and the wave that's coming behind will swallow up the wave that preceded it. I mean, how much of what you were doing 2 years ago has not been completely reshaped today? So you getting in today just means that you have a better tool to move forward into the future, right? And so I really like that, we can look at things and we can understand that we live in such a time where there are really no boundaries. The amount of learning that we can, that we can receive and that we can go out there and the education that we can achieve along the way is just so huge. And so I would say, get started, and the best time to enter is right now, and go for it, and leverage the tools that are available at your disposal today, and go win.
Well, I would agree with both of you wholeheartedly in your final remarks that it's what matters. You got a chance to go win the day like never before, and the opportunities are greater than they've ever been before.
Here's a dirty secret, Josh. Sorry to interrupt. You know that chart you showed?
Yes.
I sent you this morning with the gold buys by country.
Yes.
So I'm not a techie by nature, but I said, Anthony, I need an hour of your time, and you're going to show me some of these tools and give me an idea on what you're doing. And by the way, I used Anthony. Could have easily used YouTube, right? But I happen to know Anthony, and so I used Anthony. And I built that chart this morning using some tools that he showed me on the way to work, literally in my car driving with some prompts, and it built that full ticker live that I can now use in perpetuity. It's amazing. Unbelievable.
That's pretty awesome. We showed off what the non-techie Blake built with.
That's right. But I'm trying to give everyone hope out there,
Yeah. That's it. Well, and I just say as we close out today, right, that never been a better time to live as an entrepreneur, but there's also never been a better opportunity before with taking control of your financial future, like Poland just did, right, as an individual family and as an individual. And so we look forward next week to spending some time with you, where we'll get back together. Do us a favor, right? Drop us a comment, share what you've learned this week, and more importantly, right, take the opportunity to, as Anthony and Blake both said so eloquently today, to stack consistent behaviors on top of each other, whether it's in your personal finances with the SoundMoney wallet, or whether it's in your business and life by doing something every day to grow your idea, your business, your personal development. Stack it on top of each other a little bit every day. This dollar cost averaging thing just isn't for gold and silver, it's for life. It's with habits and daily consistency that we win. And we're grateful for all the listeners. You guys are awesome. Can't wait to see you next week as we dive into another topic in the Sound Money, Sound Principles podcast. You guys are awesome. Thanks, Anthony and Blake, for your time today. Our listeners have been greatly benefited. You guys have a great week.
Thanks, guys.